scrap pieces, motorcycles, car pieces, all kinds of stuff. So it starts out, this is what we call the tail. It's made up of camshafts and springs, coil springs from different things. Here's the bicycle frames that I'm going to use to create the frame of the body in order to attach everything to it. This is where I've started cutting and forming the shapes that I want that'll make up the shape of the body. In this next slide, you'll see I've started to form it together in the shapes that I want with the ideas that I have in place that'll make up this. Here it shows I'm doing some high cuts in the frames and forming them to the shape that I want of the body. Another slide, same thing, just a different different angle. You can see where it connects to the tail, which the tail is known as the abdomen, and the body that we're talking about. Now this is a piece off of a motorcycle sprocket. It's 2 parts. I attach this to the bottom of the frame or the body, in which later on will become where the legs attach. And this is just a picture of a weld that you can see that what I'm doing here. This next slide just shows more of the body. It's an upside down view of my vision of how it's going to come together as far as for the body. I don't do anything I do on paper. It all comes from my mind's eye. I can see it in my head, and then I just build it as I go. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes I have to change it, but that's the gift of this, is that, you can always change it. Nothing's permanent. You can always cut it and re-weld it. It's just showing the body as it's coming together, attached to the tail. The piece out front there is where the neck is, the head will attach to. So as I'm building this, the structural part of it, before it gets to where I'm just adding pieces to fill in the body, these are handlebars that I've used off of BMX bicycles, and those are going to be where the wings attach. Again, I like to try to do it so it's proportionately right. Sometimes it takes a little extra effort to get there, but you can see I just use different parts and pieces come in mind. And this is showing a little piece of a weld here I did that looked like a little alien popped out to me. It's just part of doing this. You come across things, and that little weld there turned out to look like a little alien head. So I just took a picture of it. In this next slide, again, just more motorcycle parts and car parts and just different scrap metal. People I know just give me stuff all the time. I gather it everywhere I go. It's kind of an addiction, but it's a good addiction. It could be a lot worse. This is just showing, more steps of it coming together and what that looks like. Here I've started adding more gears and pieces around the frame that will, make it up look more solid. As we get further along, you'll understand why. Some of these are, motorcycle parts, some are car parts. More angles of how it's looking. Originally the tail wasn't the length that I, proportionately it wasn't the same as what I wanted, so I ended up adding some to the end of the tail there, another camshaft, and finished it off with a tooth off of a bucket. Well, that picture kind of went back from the last one. The last one had a little camshaft from a Harley motor and a chain hook to it. There it is again. So this project I had at this point, 100 hours into it, somewhere around there. This is from a semi exhaust pipe. This is the heat shroud that goes on the outside of them. If you're familiar with that, that's what that is. Just some more angles of what we're looking at here. Little gears, little sprockets, a little bit of chain. So the handlebars there were welded tight, welded to the frame. Everything's welded really well, as far as just making sure that it's all really solid and not going to come apart, because I know this project is going to weigh quite a bit. I never did figure out how much it weighs total, but more heat shroud on the bottom of the body. And as time goes by here, you find different things and do different methods to weld them together. And the frame is chromoly on a bicycle, and then you've got these other mild steel. You've got some different stuff like that. Here's some dozer gears off of Caterpillar B6, I believe, that I had welded together. They're gonna start making up the base. This is a part where the base is going to be widened by using these sprockets, and showing off some of my welds, I guess. There, just more pictures to explain kind of what I'm doing. Here you see this is I forget what they call it. It's a piece off of a loader or some part of the rear end. You can see by my glove and my feet there how big this is. It's very heavy. These I've started to attach some springs off of semi-trailer, leaf springs. They'll make up the blade of grass that Juniper will sit on. And in these pictures, it's just showing, different ways that I've attached it. I actually made it so it would come apart, but then later decided that I didn't want the base to come apart, that we were going to, do something different with her as far as how many pieces it would be in. So these ended up getting welded on there. Some of them were bolts, and I could take it apart, but I decided not to. Cleaned up, it looks pretty good. It's just a lot of welds and structural type, welds to make it strong. And you can see I cut up a couple different leaves and welded them to each other. This kind of gives it the aspect of a blade of grass, and it also springs like it's in the wind. So when it's windy or whatever, it'll kind of give the, like it's in motion. Not kinetic, but still just motion. This here is the bottom of the gear that we were looking at, the sprocket before, which is this little part was the legs will attach to that, and then it's bolted with 5 or 6 bolts, I believe, that hold the legs to the dragonfly. There it is there. The bolts are shown to put in place. Here's where I've started the legs. The legs are just random pieces of pipe. Some of them were, 1 inch, some were 1.5 inches for the bigger legs in the back. And I used some larger chain. Not even sure what the chain was from, but larger than motorcycle chain for the joints of the legs. Same thing, I used the chain there so the legs would move so I could position them right. And I'll have to say this is probably the toughest part of the project. This project took a long time. I ended up having about 250 hours into it when it was complete, and I'll bet that over 100 hours were spent on the legs, because they were, proportionately they had to be right. And I did a lot of cutting and welding again and cutting them and welding them back together, and there was a lot of frustration, but at the same time so pleasing. Doing a project like this is always a huge undertaking, but the most joy in doing this and seeing the completion is just phenomenal. The way it makes you feel. I think anybody can do this kind of stuff. You just have to put your mind to it. I'm a backyard welder. I never did, never certified in welding, but I just wanted to do it, and I did it. So here we can see the legs. Sorry about the picture's a little blurry, but this is how the legs are coming together on that plate there that bolts to the bottom of the body. A couple different angles. They were all kind of just loose, so I could move them and position them how I wanted. And there's kind of a look at what they will look like. The front legs are there to the right, and the middle legs, of course, and the back legs. I had to mock up a blade of grass to work on the legs in my shop. I couldn't leave the dragonfly outside. I didn't want it to rust up and get create more work for me. So you can see I've just made this blade of grass in the garage here, and kind of let the legs hang free and positioned them how I wanted, and then kind of tacked them together, and just to get them where they were right, as far as right to me. I always try to create less is more. Sometimes trying to go overthinking stuff is makes it more difficult, and I do that quite a bit because I want it to be right, and not right for anybody else, but just for me. I'm kind of perfectionist in that way, a little bit OCD, but it's okay. These are all good characteristics of who I am as an artist, and what it takes to do this kind of stuff. But like I said, it's super fun. I love doing this. So there it is again. I've got the body of Juniper out here, and I'm getting ready to put up the angle so we can see, how it's going to sit on the blade of grass. And again, just a lot more time and a lot of thinking goes into it. You never know how something's going to work out until you do it. And a lot of times it took me a long time to figure it out, but in the end, turned out really good. You can see the legs down there. I've got it positioned over the blade of grass, and yeah, that Subaru right there hauled a lot of metal. Unfortunately, I blew that car up because I think I worked it to death. Anyways, more of it. Just getting ready to see how it works with the legs, and here it is. I've got it hoisted up, and I've got the legs bolted to the body, and just making sure it freestands. And then I used railroad spikes here to use as fingers or hands, feet, whatever you want to call it, on the end of the legs here that hold on to the blade of grass. I did a lot of study of dragonflies. I learned a lot of things about them, interesting facts that you don't always know about dragonflies, and hopefully I covered that in the beginning of the video. But that being said, there's always more you can learn as you go, and you're building stuff and looking at pictures. And that's basically how I built this, by looking at pictures of dragonflies and just kind of piecing it together. Here's the legs. They're now welded to the base. That's one piece, the base and the legs. And then the finishing of the legs, I used some nails and created what looks like hair on the legs. I guess how they feel, stuff like that, as far as the when they're landing, and these hairs help guide them and whatnot. And there it is. There's the legs, and this completes this part of the leg project for the dragonfly.